Hi, good evening. I'm a little short. My name is Yana Kashper, and I'm the co-founder of Recovery Fitness. We're a brand new nonprofit here in Rochester. And I just want to say thank you to all the panelists, all the people that spoke, the room full of people that are here to talk about recovery, talk about addiction and recovery. I'm also a licensed clinical social worker, and I've been working in the field for about a decade. I received a graduate degree from NYU, and I had a 4.0 in the height of my addiction. I was not dumb. I was not lacking willpower. I had a chronic disease, and that chronic disease took everything from me. But I'm here to tell you that recovery is possible. As Stephanie mentioned, we know what the problem is. You don't need me to tell you what the problem is. We don't need all you folks to tell us what the problem is. We could look in the news. We could see all the deaths. And I'm a little nervous. And like Stephanie mentioned, we have a solution that we've seen work. The Rockefeller drug laws that targeted low-level criminals with mandatory minimums probably didn't take away the money from the schools. I mean, they're probably not the solution that we have today. The problem that we have today is a chronic illness, which is addiction. And a lot of folks talked about cancer being a chronic illness. I don't know about you guys, but I haven't seen anyone get sick from cancer and people look at them and say, oof, your vomit is repulsive. But I've seen people go through withdrawal and have that same reaction. And that is the problem that we face. As Stephanie talked about, we need more money. We need more money for services. Absolutely, we need more supports. The Rochester area detox generally has a 100-person wait list. Think about that. 100-person wait list in Rochester, New York. That is unacceptable. We could increase incarceration stays. We could increase substance program stays. They would have a benefit, but you'd leave these people and drop them right back into those communities, and then what? You set them up to fail. What we're asking for is recovery community organization, peer support programs. What Recovery Fitness is a nonprofit in Rochester based around sober peers committed to leading physically active lifestyles. We have a live network of supports. The Gloucester department, the angels they talk about, the recovery coaches, that's what we need money for. The treatment services, absolutely. All that stuff is important. But we have a low-cost alternative to death, peer support. Our programs cost nothing. Our average hikes yield about 40 people in recovery. We have touched over 500 individuals since inception in September. Those are some big numbers. And we need your help. We need your help to reach more people. There needs to be an atmosphere of recovery. And there needs to be less stigma. We need to shatter that stigma, and that's what Recovery Fitness aims to do. We have 3 initiatives under Recovery. One is the community of sober peers that help and guide one another. Another is the outreach. We talk to treatment centers. We talk to anyone that will listen, parole, probation. And the last one is education, to get into the schools, give them presentations, talk about recovery, talk about what it looks like. Not just say, stop using drugs and alcohol, and here you go, live freely. It talks about what you do when you stop using drugs and alcohol. And that's really the miracle of this. I lost my entire life to addiction, and I gained it back in recovery. And I live a life beyond my wildest dreams, and that's possible. And that's the atmosphere we need to put out there. Recovery is possible. Thank you so much for having me up here. Sorry you took your time.
Thank you.
Hi, my name's Jim Bobreski. I'm a New York State taxpayer and common citizen. I just look at things pragmatically. First, about what really irks me are dealers themselves and the sociopathic nature they have. They don't care about anybody. And what I find interesting, there are avenues, is to take the profit out of drug trafficking. And I also question, just to bring up the aspect of Afghanistan, which supplies 60% of America's heroin now, 3 times what it did back before 9/11. And where's the federal role in this? You know, if we don't have the substance, we can't start the addiction. And I know it's a long process, and I know there's many factors, and I'm going to address that. And the other thing is Tom Brokaw wrote a book called The Greatest Generation. I think we've lost that, and I think that one of the root causes of addiction and the crisis problems we have is we've kind of lost hope. Is the American dream there anymore? If I were 18 years old today, I'd be scared. I started out as an electrician, and 30 years ago, I would make as much as I do today. And yet the price of a car has escalated 6 to 8 times that. The cost of a house is out of reach. All the things that I was brought up on, I'm a second-generation American. My grandparents came from Europe. They were poor. I actually went back to the areas they were, and people don't realize they're still driving ox carts in Russia. Okay, that's part of my family. They're still doing that today. And they came, my grandparents came, and he was in this country, 8 years? He owned a house, he owned property. That was unheard of in Europe. Unheard of. But where is that today for an 18-year-old? What does an 18-year-old, I think of Devin, what he talked about, and I'm saying, would I be disillusioned? Would I seek another thing that would make me feel good? You know, cost of education is outrageous. I could go, in my time, I could go to Rutgers, which was an Ivy League school, for $400 a semester. That's out of the question for a community college today. So I look at root causes and ask you people in there and the people who have gone through the experience of seeking some other source. Is there a future for the American youth today? And with the universality of labor, China, other jobs, I'm not blaming other countries. It's just an evolution process. We're becoming more global. Political borders are going to change. Geographic borders are going to change. They're going to become economic borders in the near future, and I say within 20 years. Our whole system is going through a massive change, and we need to factor that in. And where drugs fits in is fulfilling some kind of need that we can't get that we would rather have, like having a home, having security, things that today just are not present. And I'm not blaming anybody. I think it's an evolution process as well as other things. And we need to factor that in. What is the hope for the future in this country? Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I'm Michael Christensen, lifelong resident here in the village of Penn. Before I get into a lot of my background, I have a question. I've seen, or I've heard tonight, a lot of reference to funding. And one issue that came to light weeks ago to me in the media, I saw it once and I haven't seen it since, and I don't know if it's true or not, especially seeing how I got it from the media. But I was with the sheriff's office, worked with Sheriff Spike for 31 years. We were in the back of beat-up old green vans down on Route 14, stumbling around back in the day. But in the mid-'80s, a program was initiated where the federal government would sponsor a seizure if you had a defendant, whether they had a vehicle, whether they had a residence, that the federal government, as long as local law enforcement did the paperwork, proved their case, and took it to the U.S. attorney up in Rochester, they would pursue a seizure for the funds that these drug dealers, and we've talked about funding today. We've heard increased funding enough times. So I'm trying to get to the crux of things here. But it was a great program wherein the U.S. Attorney's Office would handle the seizure of, it could be a home, it could be a car, it could be the cash money that was taken during the arrest, and for 20% of the net, they would handle it, and local law enforcement got the other 80%. And it had to be used for increased drug enforcement, drug programs, anything involved in the drug issue. And it's my understanding now that, and I'm not pointing the finger at you gentlemen, because it's my understanding it was at the national level, U.S. Department of Justice, and I heard the reference earlier today that this is a nationwide crisis, which if anybody reads the paper, you recognize that this heroin issue is not just in Yates County. So anyways, my question is that true? Has that program been nixed, and who's responsible for that?
Yeah, there has been a recent change in that. I would defer to the table over here on the specifics of that.
Yeah, the U.S. Department of Justice has put an end to that program. If you remember the DAG 71 form,
Yes, I do.
no longer available to us, and they've stopped it.
No.
So any asset forfeiture through the feds, through the DEA, has stopped.
Now, who made that decision?
Not us.
I know you did. I know. I prefaced my question with that.
It was actually.
I know you guys didn't.
it was,
But is
former-
that the
former US
Obama administration?
Former U.S. Attorney Eric Holder.
Eric Holder. And who does he get his marching orders from? I'm not trying to
Today,
politicize.
probably just Mrs. Holder, but back in the day, it was President Obama.
Okay, and I'm not politicizing things, but if anybody, and I defer to the sheriffs here in the district attorney's office, and Judge Felvey, who was a former district attorney, I believe back in the 80s when we were dealing with this, that program initiated a lot of money. And all I've heard today from everybody here is increased funding. And there it is. It's gone out the window. This week, up in Rochester, 18 pounds of cocaine. Now, those of you that aren't involved in drug enforcement might not recognize that's a lot of coke. $300 and some odd thousand, a BMW, and now that's not getting seized. And all I heard about tonight is how much more money we need. I implore on our political leaders to get to the bottom of that issue and put a hammer on with this epidemic, and that's what's been referred to here today, a national crisis, an epidemic, that we need more funding. There it is. There it is, and it's just gone up in smoke in the last week. And how many here tonight had heard about that? Not a lot. Never. Now,
Mike, if I could just address that over here, Valerie. Hi. While there are some serious restrictions for the federal forfeiture procedures, they are still available in a very limited way if the federal prosecution started as a federal investigation. What we do have, though, available through our state law and our state seizure and asset forfeiture provisions is the ability to, and we've done this over the last 2 years. It's one of the things that I've instituted, is done some asset forfeiture. So you're looking at vehicles, some cash, and that gets dispersed to a percentage to the law enforcement agency, a percentage to OASIS, which is the state substance abuse agencies, and a smaller percent to the DA's office, and that gets used specifically to fund law enforcement related activities such as training, etc.
Right.
So those funds by statute it's very strictly regulated as to what we can spend that kind of money on. But make no mistake, I mean, we're really not seeing the primary dealing that you're talking about, where people have bundles of cash, isn't really happening here.
Right, but there's still vehicles and there's still homes, and I'm familiar with the program you're
Yep.
talking about.
Yep.
At the
And-
state level, unfortunately, the state, they got such a huge hunk of the pie that what came
It's
back
over
to local law enforcement.
It's over 40% that goes to OASIS. It's almost 30%,
Exactly. And the
almost
program that-
30% that goes to the local law enforcement agency, and the rest
30%.
into the DA's office to spend on law enforcement.
Right, and that's my concern, where this federal program, 80% went back to local law enforcement, and the feds kept 20% for their problems, and now that's gone. So that question being answered, I also have to reflect on my experiences. As I mentioned earlier with Sheriff Spike, I go back 30-plus years and was actively involved in drug enforcement. And I don't have to tell a lot of people here, but you would think that this is something new after what you've heard tonight. This has been going on for a while. And I keep hearing, once again, increased funding. I think we need to take another look at what we've been doing for the last 30 years that hasn't been working. Whether it's the Rockefeller laws that shouldn't have been changed, whether it's this Good Samaritan law, that really concerns me. I mean, we need to hold people accountable. Gail spoke about just being concerned with the marijuana laws. Well, we have somebody that goes into an overdose, and because they call for help, the gloves are off. Now, how would that work as far as enforcing our DWI laws? If somebody goes off the road and hits a telephone pole and they get on the phone and call for help, do they get a free ride for their DWI because they called for help? No. We wouldn't have good enforcement if that was the case. So I think we need to take a look at the laws that we're already using that aren't being effective. We need to look at the treatment programs. I served on both the village board and the school board with Dr. Dennis, and I've heard all this talk about we have to get into the schools. We've been getting into the schools. Okay, I think maybe what we need to do is to get into the families. We need 2 parents back in the household. We need some parents taking responsibility. We need to get into the families to get this dealt with. Asking the government for more funding, for more programs, I think it's time to take a step back and say, wait a minute, what have we been doing with the funding we're already spending? I apologize for my delivery. My wife often tells me, Mike, it's not your message, it's your delivery. So I apologize for that, and thanks for your time.
All right, Michael, thank you very much. Michael was last and certainly not least. Thank you for wrapping things up for us in good fashion. Alexis has something she would like to say down here regarding Truth Farm.
Thank you so much for letting me do that. A lot of people spoke tonight about the community getting involved, and I agree with the senators. They put a lot of good legislation out last year, and the Assembly failed to pass, I believe, every single measure that you put in place aside from maybe one. Truth Farm is taking trips to Albany February 25th, March 1st, March 15th, and March 16th. Any community member is welcome to join us, and we're going to visit assemblymen and senators in Albany. And we really need community support. We need more people to join us, more people to go to Albany and talk to our political leaders and tell them the things that you're all talking about tonight. We need to go to Albany and talk to them face to face. They need to hear from us. So you can find our information on our website, www.truthfarm, spelled with a PH, .org, or you can find us on our Facebook, and we'd love to have anybody that would like to go with us join us.
Thank you, Alexis. Okay, it's almost 10 o'clock. We're going to wrap it up. I want to thank Penn School System for the use of this beautiful auditorium here this evening. I want to thank all of our panelists for your time, your input on this, my colleagues for coming from all across the state to be here, for all of you for coming and attending and being so attentive for this. It shows the extent of the concern that this community has for this problem. And I agree with what all of our speakers said here this evening with regards to this needs to be a whole community approach to this, and it's not just about money. We do look at refocusing our programs, but we have a $145 billion budget we're considering in Albany right now. We ought to be able to find the appropriate resources or reshift resources to focus more intensely on this, but it is going to take the community at large to really fight this through our churches, through our community organizations, all of these groups to do that. So thank you all, and please be active in your community.